This is the MFS Wellness Podcast. I am Mike Sinopoli. And today, coinciding with the series we have going within the podcast regarding modern dating and relationships, and me being far from the expert on that subject, I have the pleasure of welcoming today a relationship coach, author of the book Bad Marriage Advice, and host of the podcast Secrets of Happily Ever After, Miss Monica Tanner. Monica, how's it going?
So good. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Of course, of course. I'm excited. It was actually really good that we connected because, over the last month or so, we've been doing kind of this kind of content on the podcast, and there's been a lot of confusion out there, and everybody seems a bit upset in their relationships, in the dating world, and all of this. And I'm just blessed to have you here to maybe clear some things up. We could talk about it going forward. So, why don't we hear a little about you and your history and what you do?
I like you said, I am certified in relational life therapy as well as sex therapy. I am a relationship coach. I work with mostly couples who have been married for, days or decades. I love my newlywed couples, but I also have a lot of couples that are moving in the transition of empty nesting. So those are my couples. And then I also have a lot of single clients who have an anxious attachment and are looking to create a more secure attachment to prepare themselves to have really healthy relationships. So I love talking all things relationships, whether you're single, in a couple. I not only want to lower the divorce rate, but raise marital satisfaction because there's a huge difference between staying married and creating an exceptional marriage.
That sounds very true. And I do believe what we celebrate longevity, we glorify longevity, but it's the quality of the relationship that I think we need to focus on a little bit more, right? Like who's more successful, the ones that got out 15 years in and went about happy lives, or those who made it 60 years and were miserable the whole time? I don't know. You know,
I love comedy that has to do with
yeah,
marriage.
yeah.
The algorithm got me, right? I love little marriage bits.
Hmm.
And I just barely this morning saw one that was like, these couples like to brag about being married for, 32 years or whatever, but we don't know. She could be chained in the basement. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm like, that's true. Like you
yeah.
could be living in a situation like that. And so it's not enough to just be married or stay married. Like you've got to create an incredible, thriving, passionate, intimate partnership that you can be proud of. And so that's what I help couples do.
Man, they need that help, it seems, because I feel like that's what everybody seems to want but cannot attain in a sense.
Mm.
Not everybody, I say that generally, obviously, but the vast majority of people I think out there want this blissful idea of marriage. And you think we got sold? Because sometimes I say this, we got sold growing up, a lot of fairy tales, happily ever after.
Mhm.
Then we grow up, we watch rom-coms, and at the end of the movie, everybody's good, everything's content and great. I feel like maybe we have the societal path with boxes to check, and then we get to the end of those boxes and we see that this blissful thing that we've been kind of conditioned to believe isn't really there most of the time because we haven't done specific work. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's so interesting because, of course, I grew up on Disney movies, right? The end of the movie, the prince kisses the princess and they go off into the sunset and live happily ever after, right? And so you think
Hmm.
it's that easy. And I remember being very curious about relationships growing up. My parents divorced when I was 12 years old. And so from that point on, I just was really observant of married couples and what they were doing and how they were relating to each other. And I was disappointed because it felt like they weren't that happy. Like they were just kind of doing the work of marriage or life together, and they didn't seem to be having a lot of fun. And I was like, there's got to be a better way because I don't want to just survive this,
Right.
right? Like I want to make it special. And I think that's a good commentary on where modern marriage is now. We expect a lot more from our marriages now than I think generations past did, right? But before, couples would try to find each other to be compatible and to just like work together to create a life versus now we want to be married to our best friend, our soulmate, the one who challenges us, our lover, our adventure buddy. Like we want so much out of modern marriage, but what that requires is elevating our skill set. So we're not playing like junior level anymore. This is like competition, like massive difference in just the little skills aren't going to help us anymore. We need to really hone in and get skillful at relationality. So
Right. I
so
agree
yeah,
with
and
you.
that requires a lot of communication,
Absolutely. And what do you
whereas I
think?
don't think it did before.
No, it's true. And speaking of communication and connectivity and all of that, where do you see this new way of connectivity we have through social media, through dating apps, through all of
Mm.
this other, not even just connecting with people, but seeing people's supposed happy endings everywhere now? Like they're out there broadcasting their lives on social media, and we all perceive things in a way, and people will put out their highlights, and we'll think that their life is perfect, and
Yep.
meanwhile we're struggling in a relationship in some fashion. In your work and with your clients, you got to be seeing a lot of this. Has like what's changed? Like everyone's always, oh, we want to go back to the 50s. I don't know if you want to go back to the
No,
50s
I don't know.
because women weren't necessarily able to get out of these terrible relationships to them
There
because of
was,
the
yeah, there was so
workforce.
much wrong with
So,
that. We've made a lot of progress. And listen, I don't think social media is all bad. There's
right,
a lot of benefit to the connectivity and the reality that is social media. So yeah, you can be like, yeah, it's everybody's highlight reel, but there's a lot of people getting pretty vulnerable. The spread of information, the way we're able to, my husband, he's like he's very much of this old school social media is bad. It's rotting your brain. Like, I mean, he hates to see me on my phone or my kids or whatever. And this is an area in which we have very polarizing views of social media.
mhm,
And I don't think it's all bad. Like, I think, we used to struggle siloed way back when there wasn't social media, right? We used to think that we were having a challenge or a struggle and we were the only ones. Whereas now we can open up our phones and see that lots of people deal with seasonal depression. Lots of people are having the same fight over and over and over again that we're having with our spouse. In fact, what I was talking about earlier, like comedians make light of like regular day-to-day problems that all of us face. And so
mhm,
instead of being like, oh, why am I, miserable in this, we can start to laugh at it and be like, oh gosh, this is a common thing
mhm.
it's just human nature, right? This is just part of the human condition. And so I don't think social media is all bad, but yeah, we've got it just like any other vice, like sugar. We've got to learn how to create a healthy relationship with it. It's not like we're going to annihilate all sugar. We've
Right.
just got to see, like, it creates a lot of joy when we use it properly, but overuse is going to cause a lot of damage. And I find social media to be very similar. There can be a lot of joy that can come from it, but if we overuse it or we don't use it correctly, it's going to create a lot of pain.
That's very well said. And I say that analogy to my clients with nutrition is that, they think this is bad or good and there's no in between. But,
Mhm.
the poison is in the dosage, is what I say. And then I
Right.
think the poison is also in the dosage in how much we're swiping and taking it in. And we can't blame the actual technology, I think, because it does work for good. And I agree with you because I've been able to do this podcast. You've been able to do your podcast
Hmm.
through and your book and everything to kind of broadcast that through social media and connect with good people. And I've met a lot of good people through this as well. So there's just it's basically kind of like you can't blame the technology. It's how you're using it in many
Yes.
ways. I mean, there are some algorithm tricks in there, but you got to know about. But it's really a test in self awareness, I'd say.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly, right. Like
right.
it's so funny because my husband and I love to get crumble cookie, right? And sometimes we'll go off sugar, right?
Hmm.
And we'll try to like not eat it. And I'm like, it's not like we can blow up the crumble cookie, right? Like it's still there.
Yeah.
Like we can't like make it go away, but
No.
we've just got to learn how to, navigate it. And that's exactly social media. There are so many benefits to social media, but yeah, I mean, on the other end of the coin is the downfall. So
Now, do you think crumble cookie, do you think it's overly sugar? Like, do you think it's too much? Does it give you a headache if you eat it? If you go off sugar for a while and you have crumble, you just enjoy it. It's
no,
good.
crumble
Okay.
cookie brings so much joy. But it's for me, and we create a lot of oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm having trouble thinking of the word I'm
It
looking for,
happens.
but rituals around food, right? And so for me, crumble cookie is not only sweet, it tastes good. I love the different, flavors that they come up with, but it's
Hmm.
also bonding with my husband. I mean,
Yeah.
once a week for like a huge chunk of time, we would go on Friday or Saturday nights and we would enjoy a crumble cookie together. So for me, it stirs up all kinds of like great feelings, joy, pleasure, right? So to eliminate it from my life is like, wait, right? We've
Right.
got to find something else to take its place.
Oh, for sure. And that's what I do with, my clients on my end of stuff. Say, hey, sometimes you're going to bond over food, like you said. And this is a very big thing within, like, it's not just between you and your person, but also, families sit down and have dinner. And
Yes.
and within reason, you enjoy something, and that's what keeps you going, I think. It's going to be 80% of everything is going to be all right. And then the rest, hey, whatever it is. And you can do well doing that, I think. I think that's a good general rule overall in life and maybe even in relationships. So, one thing that you mentioned, and I know you talk about it potentially even on your podcast or your book, is the myths. There's myths, I believe, that you stated that still persist around marriage. Would you care to, just let me know? I love myths. I'm a big myth
Yeah.
guy. Like
Let's bust them.
I
All right,
love
here we go.
myths and myth busting. So, what are some of these common myths that we don't have to abide by or think about anymore around marriage or relationships?
Yeah. Well, in my book, there's 15 of them that I bust wide open, right?
All
And
right.
so, I mean, pick your poison. There's so many of these cliche and on some level, well-meaning, right? Like it's not meant to destroy your marriage, but a lot of times they sound really good on the outset, but trying to follow them actually creates a lot of pain. So, one of them I would say is don't sweat the small stuff. It's really easy to say and it sounds really good and honorable. And I've sat across from so many podcast hosts where they're like, well, wait a second. Yeah, pick your battles, right? Like you shouldn't be getting upset over everything. But I say, yes, you actually should. You should fight for all the things that are important to you and start with the small stuff, right? Learn how to skillfully address the small stuff before it becomes the big stuff.
Right.
Because where do you think the big stuff comes from, right? So, if it's as small as, and this, I always talk about this, and sometimes I get so much pushback. When my husband and I first got married, he didn't understand that women need toilet paper every time they go to the bathroom. Men only half the time. And so my husband could, if he ran out, if he used the last of the toilet paper, it's not that big of a deal because chances are the next time he went in there, wouldn't need it. But early in our marriage, I was like, hey, listen, it would really help me out if you replace the toilet paper roll every single time it ran out and also make sure it goes this way because that's the right way.
Oh, that's the right way. So you guys got to have to compromise on that if you have that differently. And believe me, I've been in some public bathrooms and I do think there are some men that do need toilet paper every time they take a piss because I've seen some toilet seats that are pretty destroyed. But anyways, I won't give you TMI from that, but please continue.
But to many people, that would be a small thing. Like, oh, why
Right.
sweat that, right? Like, just replace the toilet paper yourself. But like, no, like that was something that my husband didn't think about or care about. It wasn't a big deal to him. But I am so grateful that I pointed it out early because think about 20 years later now, every time I sit down and there's no toilet paper, I'm pissed. Why? Because I didn't say something 20 years ago when it was not that big of a deal.
Mhm.
And so listen, sweat the small stuff, but learn how to skillfully address the things that are important to you. And I would say address them throughout your marriage.
Right.
Don't let the little seeds of resentment become massive weeds choking out the love and generosity in your relationship. That's
Right.
what I would say. So that one, exit
I
off.
like that. And you got a brick wall behind you, and each of those little small things is a brick, right? And each one compiles and builds up until you burst one day because you haven't sweated enough any of the little small things, and they just become one big giant resentment ball, right?
I
Am
love
I
that. And
do I
resentment always comes out sideways in a way that you would not want it to come
No,
out.
I've seen it. I've been in it. I've been there. I've seen it many different ways. I won't mention any specifics, but whatever. Maybe some of it was deserved by me, but what do I know? And we'll see. What other myths you got out there? Anything else
Oh, happy
that you
wife,
want to
happy
share?
life. Love that one, right? Men
Yes.
say that with so much pride. Oh, she wears the pants. We just make sure she's the boss. We know who's in charge of this
Mhm.
household, right? That only works for a little while until the man realizes there's nothing in this relationship for me and now I'm super resentful, right? So why not teach happy spouse, happy house? There's
Mm.
no need for happy wife, happy life. I cringe when I hear that, but it's so very common.
Yeah, that is one that I've always heard too, and I was going to use that analogy that you did too because I'd heard that as well. So I do. It takes two people, to be happy and do this sort of thing. So totally get it. So, but I won't make you spoil all of them right now. So we just wanted to
There's a
do
lot. There's a
I'm sure
lot.
there are. So,
What's
um,
your favorite marriage advice that you?
my favorite marriage advice. Whew, you're talking to a guy who was with one person for about 23 years.
Oh,
So
okay.
Um, I don't have great marriage advice, and I had a, post marriage relationship that was all right, but I ultimately ended. And I'm out here being single for the first time for like the last year here. So I'm not good at advice. I would just say that you got to communicate. I do believe that what you're saying about that resentment building up to small things, I won't name specifics, but there was this instance, these instances that would come up a lot of times on both ends where nothing was said and spoken for about, maybe months or even years at a time. And then at some point, it just all came out. And it was just like, why didn't we talk about this before? And I think, now do you believe too, because when I was getting divorced and everything like that, you try to salvage things, you go to therapy and everything. Where do you start? Like, where does somebody start with that? Like, my instance was to go back to the foundation and see what rocked it. Because literally, in a long-term relationship, a lot of this, if you're building on a bad foundation or on traumas and things that were happening when you were a different person, that was my sort of thought process. Is that a good way to start for like if people are having any of those issues, you think? Like going back?
There's this statistic out there, and I've heard it many, many times that couples will wait 6 years in a miserable marriage before they will ask for help. And I think that is tragic, right? Anything I can do to curb that. So I have a special for newlywed or engaged couples, right? If they will come to me, I will give them 3 sessions for almost nothing because I think building on a firm foundation of marriage is of utmost importance. And not only that, now you've established with a practitioner that you love and you trust. And so now when something comes up post honeymoon period, you be like, you know what? Instead of waiting and letting this fester for years, 6 years, let's go see that coach that helped us at the beginning of our marriage, right? She already knows the dynamic, she already knows who we are. We can just get straight into what is troubling us now. So I think it's of utmost importance. I think it takes so much courage and commitment to ask for help. And why is this? It makes no sense. If you want to be an elite athlete, you hire a great coach. If you want to have a successful business, you get a coach or consultant in there to point out the blind spots, the things that you can't see. If you want to elevate your marriage, get a third perspective. Get somebody in there who can help you because I always say you can't read the label from the inside of the bottle. So if you're in a dynamic and you're trying to figure it out, you're just going to get really frustrated unless you either get a really, really good friend who can be neutral or get a coach or somebody who can look at it from a different perspective and show you what you're not seeing.
I love that. And even in the episode we did the female perspective, and we're going to do the male one next. So we're kind of in between those two. And one question I put up to the ladies was kind of exactly what you're saying. And it was everyone, no one really thought about it. I don't think it was almost like preventative therapy in a sense. Like
Yeah.
when you get together, maybe go see somebody like kind of exactly what you're saying, like preventative therapy for couples, like where you go in and think, hey, nothing's actually wrong, but hey, we need to let's go make sure we can communicate right. Let's establish something so that we don't get to that point to where we're starting to feel resentment and we wait 6 years. So
Right.
you think so you would say that's a viable option that we're not doing at all as a society,
Yeah,
really?
I mean, get some skills so that you're not starting from nothing, right? I always think it's so interesting that when 15 or 16-year-olds, before we give them a license to drive a car, we actually send them through a whole program. We let them practice a little bit, right? And
Hmm.
then we make them take a test to show that they know what the rules of driving on the road are. They're not going to get out there and of course they're going to get out there and do something stupid, but they're hopefully not going to create a lot of damage because they know the skills, they've been tested, right? Why do we just give people marriage licenses willy-nilly without giving them any relationship training at all?
Well, it makes total sense. Like, what are we doing? Like, we're just in there without a net. We're just, and
Oh,
this
they'll figure it
becomes,
out.
yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, it even becomes worse because some people have those deep rooted issues and they come out in abuse, like literally, like
Mm, right.
scary stuff. Like we're just talking about people having arguments a little bit and maybe just unhappy in their marriage, but there's a lot of darkness that can happen, within that. And I'm worried, and I'm very worried, and maybe you can talk on this too because yes, we saw the divorce rate spike up in the 70s because the women went into the workforce and they were probably able to get out of a bad situation because they could fend for themselves financially, which I agree with and I think is great. I believe,
Which we
and I
have a
don't,
lot of now.
right, which is now becoming the norm. Now, at this
Women are
point,
definitely leading the charge in
sure,
initiating divorces for sure.
they sure are, and that's fine. But what I'm seeing, and I think, and this is not even a gender thing,
Mhm.
is that the inflation costs and the cost of housing and the interest rates is getting so crazy out there that it's becoming a near impossibility for somebody to split and survive on their own. And my concern with that is that there's going to be people financially stuck within their marriages and their homes.
Mm.
I don't know. If maybe I'm just saying because the way that the economy is and the cost of living versus the wages, I think we're going to see maybe a divorce rate uh I don't know, will go up or down, whatever it is, like that people are staying together more is where I'm going. And but it's unhealthy because they're just financially crippled. Do you see this as an issue or am I just thinking too far ahead and coming up with
Yeah,
stuff?
I don't know if, to be honest, I don't know if I've given that a whole lot of thought, but there are so many resources. I mean, there's so many people out there who can help you that are really, I mean, now with, I mean, the internet and
Right.
you don't have to work within your therapy you to find a good therapist, you've got to stay within your kind of zip code, right? Now we have Zoom, we have coaches, you can see anyone all over the country or in a different country if you want to. And so, being able to get resources and find the help that you need is more available now. Like we said, one of the benefits of social media is
Mhm.
you can find an expert that you trust, that you align with, that sees things the way you see things, and get with them no matter where they are, in the country or in the world. And so that's something we didn't have before. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, and there's all different forms of payment now. So
Right.
I would say just, you don't have to live in a miserable situation. Like, get some help.
There's ways out. There's ways to figure it out. Absolutely. I agree. And I'm going to ask you too, because you've been doing this a while.
Mm.
Did you get more clients, more issues coming into you after the COVID-19 deal, after we've been locked up? Because I feel like through my observations, and it might just be my age, and maybe this is, I mean, I'm in my early 40s, but it might just be this period of life that where couples are getting divorced more. But for me, I just seem to see, including my own self, that after this pandemic thing that happened, that couples were having more issues, and I was seeing more of my
Mm.
own peers and friends personally getting divorced and having marital issues. Did you notice this in your
Oh,
profession and your end?
absolutely. The whole COVID-19, it was basically group trauma. I mean, it was a difficult, challenging situation for so many reasons. Financially, people took a hit having to come home and be stuck without the different distractions that help us, like I think going for a walk or a hike or getting together in a social situation, those are all like buffers. They help you, right? Like
Hmm.
having a hobby, like being able to get together with your friends and play basketball or something, like that's going to alleviate some of the stress that comes with life and relationships in general, right? And so taking all of that away, now all you have to do is deal with each other. So
Hmm.
I see a lot of couples in midlife where kids are leaving home, aging parents, you're having to make decisions about, you're having health difficulties. A lot of times your career, you're facing retirement, things like that. There's a lot of transition that happens in midlife, and that throws couples for a loop big time because now they've got to figure out how do we support each other in these life transitions that are really hard. And I think COVID just made that mass exacerbated that in a big massive way, is that you're stuck in a small space with somebody you don't know how to support as well. And so it was great for those of us who could do couples coaching online, or you could, without leaving your home, you could, but you had to be set up for that. And so I think that was a great benefit of that time. There's
Yeah.
very few benefits that came out of COVID, but one was that everything went online. So you could find resources online to help.
Yeah, I do agree that there are some benefits to what happened over there. And for me, I just sort of like I took on a higher anxiety level, I believe, after all that, just because I believe that, and that probably played into decisions made and things like that, just because you never think you're going to live in a time where everything kind of got taken away from you. To me, there's like, to me, there's pre and post in life from this. And I
Uh-huh.
don't like to give it
Yeah.
that much credit, but I do
Yeah. Yeah.
because I just feel like even if I see literature post before 2019, I almost don't want to, depending on what it is, obviously, I almost don't
Mm,
want to read it because
right.
it doesn't have that aspect in it. I'm talking more psychology, self-help type of things.
Totally. But we couldn't
Mhm.
even go to the gym during that period of time. I mean, there was just so much that
I did.
yeah.
I did. I found one. I found one that was
We switched
ready to
gyms
do it.
because we
Yeah.
we went to the ones that were not so stringent, right? But I
You know
mean,
what?
there's just so much that
Yeah.
we took for granted pre-COVID that now I'm like, oh, I'm pretty
Yeah.
grateful that I can just get up and go to any gym and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, I
And
try to harness that in and remember that as much as I can, and being able to just go out and buy a concert ticket and go to it
right.
and do that. And again, those are things that couples bonded over. Kind of like you said, Crumble Cookie, you bonded over. There's couples that maybe bonded over going to concerts together. They
Yeah.
couldn't do that for about half a year or whatever it was, and if they did, then maybe one of them became fearful, because of the whole media. But I know we're talking a lot about this pandemic, but I really believe that shifted a lot of things.
Mhm.
Another question for you I got too that I wanted to ask you is I feel like people kind of if they're like really working on themselves and they're about change and growth, I feel like couples do that and maybe change who they are each individually every 5 to 10 years. Because I could
Mhm.
tell you if I look back 5, 10 years ago, who I am, if I read a Facebook post from me from 2009, I cringe.
Like,
I'm
who
like,
was
what the
that guy?
hell is wrong with me? And I'm like hoping, geez, I hope I don't look back at this era and cringe. I might, but they say that sort of thing means you're growing. Now, you think it's a real thing that it's unavoidable in some cases that one person grows or both grow in different directions and they became different people, and this is just something that's got to be accepted and you can't force it. So, is that ever like, as you ever have like a session to where that actually becomes the best scenario?
I think change is great. I think difference is great. And it's all in how you frame it. I think a lot of people are very scared of conflict, differences, change, growth, right? Because it means that, like, we got married on the pretense of this, and now you're doing this differently. So I see a lot of couples who have gone through faith transitions, one
Mhm.
or the other of them, right? And there's a lot of fear in that because they're like, we agreed to this and now you're completely changing the agreement. But it happens in religion, it happens in child rearing, like we agreed, that we were both going to work and now you've had a baby and you want to stay home, right? There's all kinds of like changes and navigating those things, learning how to skillfully navigate them is so important, but it's not something to be afraid of.
Mhm.
It's great. Like I said, my husband and I are so very different. We don't see eye to eye on most things, but we come to an agreement and
Mhm.
that strengthens our bond rather than weakens it, right? So, early in our marriage, there was a lot of self-abandonment, especially on my end, right? I kind of like my husband had like a much more functional family growing up life than I did. And so I would just defer to him a lot. Like I'd be like, oh, you know how to do this better than I do. We'll just do it your way. But I realized I was robbing the relationship of my perspective, which was really important and powerful.
Mhm.
So instead, now, as I've evolved and, like decades later, I'm like, wait, my voice is important and it's different than my husband's, but that adds, not subtracts. Like when we navigate that, I say our differences create passion because we discuss things very passionately sometimes. In fact, last night we were discussing something that we very much disagreed on. And we were walking around our neighborhood. It was raining. It was kind of late at night. And I was like, oh man, if someone is like sitting outside on their porch watching the rain and they could hear us right now, they'd be like, whoa. We were very passionate. We both
Hmm.
were holding on to our positions very passionately. But the passion or the differences creates passion, but navigating the differences, like learning how to live with them and kind of incorporate them and create something better with them is what has created the intimacy, right? Like seeing inside of my husband and like figuring out how he could be so different than me on this thing is what that's the intimacy. That's the trust. That's the resilience. It all comes in that like learning about each other and our differences. Instead of fearing them, it's really respecting them and like learning how to value them. That is like the strength. That's the glue. That's what makes a relationship super awesome.
I think, yeah, what you just said right there nailed everything. Like that probably could I could have, just in my humble opinion, I think that could alleviate like 90% of
Right.
relationship issues because if you see what we see, if it's any extension like social media, you can observe things and it does really feel that people get really hung up on and very, very passionate and emotional about their views, politically especially, which I don't like to talk politics too much myself, but I feel like that's just a big driver. Like in a sense, like what if you get married and you know you're moderates, and then all of a sudden, throughout this political cycle that comes through the internet, whether that be whatever, you could become an extremist to either side of something that's out there, and that could really damage a relationship. I know you probably cannot speak personally to any clients, of course, but are you able to say that you see that often? Do you
Oh,
see
of course. Yes, yes.
does political ideologies come like religion would? Does that come into
Yeah,
it?
I don't deal with a lot of political ideologies. It's more religion. I think people, I don't know. Politics just those aren't my clients specifically, but religion is a big one. And what I see is they come in and they'll be very, very kind of isolated in their own views. And here's how I like try to think about it, right? Is because what happens is yes, they'll what they'll do is they'll either one of two things. They'll either be really adamant about making the other person see it their way or making their realities match, right? Like it happened this way. No, this is the right way. Like why can't you just see it my way? And so they'll be so intent on changing the other person's perspective or they'll be completely shut down. Like I don't want to know, I don't want you to talk about what you believe. Like I
Hmm.
just don't even go there, right? And so what I like the way I try to explain this is we can only operate from our own perspective, from our experiences, like what we know. And so if you're looking at the butt of an elephant and that is your perspective and all that you see and all that you are willing to understand, you could be stuck looking at the butt of an elephant your entire life. Now, your partner might be seeing the front of the elephant. And so if you will open yourself up just to understanding their perspective, that doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Agreement is coming to the same conclusion. Understanding is being able to see what they see, right? Understanding where they're coming from. Now you have a partner who's looking at the front of an elephant and you're looking at the butt of the elephant and you understand what they're seeing. Now the two of you can see this magnificent animal together. But if you completely close yourself off to anybody else's opinion or perspective, you're just stuck looking at the butt. And
Hmm.
what would that be like your entire life? But you know people like this, right? They're not willing to consider that it could be any other way but the way they see it.
I do know people like this. It's a
Right.
lost cause, and you know
Yeah.
you.
And you're like, how? Like, I feel sorry for those people because I'm like, how awful would it be to just have your face in the butt of an elephant your whole life
There's a lot of people.
versus understanding, taking in other people's perspectives, and now you see this magnificent animal together.
Hmm. Well, there's a lot of people stuck with their heads in the butt of the elephant, in my opinion, too. Not to get graphic on that, but I believe that, and I think that the problem I think I see out there a lot, and not just with couples, but with friends and anybody, even strangers. But I feel like compromise is being looked at as losing and
Hmm. I
unclinging
don't
from
like
your
that word.
views. What's
Yes.
that?
It's a
Compromise?
big chapter in my book. I think the word compromise is a horrible way to do
Okay,
things.
I'd love to hear more about that because that always seems like it's a good thing to kind of come to a compromise. Is that did you? So let me see if I can guess. Do you think compromise kind of comes to this like reluctant agreement where it leaves resentment? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think compromise is lazy. I basically think it's like each of you giving up stuff until you come to a conclusion in the middle that neither of you is that happy with.
Mm,
So, what I teach instead is called collaboration. And collaboration requires more curiosity and communication, meaning if you take ideas big or small, so where we're going to eat dinner or like how we're going to educate our kids, you can, any range of things. When you get curious about what you value, what's important to you, what do you not want to give up here? And then you do the same for your partner. You get curious and compassionate and understanding about what they value and what's important to them. Now you can come up with you've got all this information out on the table. You can come up with a solution that's greater, that honors the best of what both of you value together versus I give a little, you give a little, we meet in the middle, right? So
hmm
I don't know if you do a visual or just an audio, but my fingers, like if you're holding two opposite positions, compromise is you stay on the same playing field and meet in the middle versus collaboration where you get a lot of information and you get really resourced and now you can be creative and you bring up the level of the solution. So that is the difference. So if you're talking, I always tell this story about our 7 year anniversary. My husband took me to San Francisco. And when we go to San Francisco, I think expensive seafood on the wharf, watching the sun go down over the bay, and it's like a beautiful experience. Well, my husband doesn't like seafood. He doesn't like spending a lot of money on food either. To him it's not an experience, it's like literally fuel.
hmm
So, how, if we had compromised, we would have ended up somewhere like Chili's, where neither of us is like that happy, but we both kind of got what we wanted enough.
hmm
But I'm not going to be happy with that. And in the long term, he's not going to be happy with that. But what we decided to do was I value seafood and the experience and the restaurant. So I chose the restaurant. I picked an expensive restaurant where I could get really nice crab legs. I wanted to eat at the exact time where I could sit and enjoy the sunset over the wharf, right?
hmm
My husband walked across the street. And if you've been to San Francisco, you know this is the case. Walked across the street, grabbed an In-N-Out burger and a shake, which is what he wanted to eat. It's cheap, it's what he likes. All right, walks into the restaurant that I chose. The waitress was like, "What, sir, you can't bring that in here." He was like, "It's my anniversary. My wife chose the restaurant. I'd like to eat with her." And the waitress was like, I know exactly what to do. She went and got a plate and a nice glass from the bar, and she plated his burger and fries and poured his milkshake into the glass. And we sat
Wow.
there and enjoyed a beautiful dinner where I got everything that I wanted and valued, and my husband did as well. And it was a beautiful template for how do we solve problems in our marriage when we have two different values.
Wow. That's
We
interesting.
collaborate, not compromise.
I like that. That's good. And you got to hope that the restaurant plays ball, but that's good that they did, and that's good service. That means you're at a good place. So they
Right.
went ahead and did that because at least
They
somebody
weren't
was.
going to turn down my money, right?
No, probably not. Not at all. No, not whatsoever. What do you think about? So I think a big factor that holds a lot of this back, and I think people have this, it's subconscious, is victim mentality. Have you dealt with
Mhm.
a lot of victim mentality? I feel like victim mentality is something that needs to get overcome for this to even begin to happen. Do you deal with a lot of people who have legitimate victim mentality to where everything feels like their fault? They won't take accountability and all of that? Because I've seen a lot of this. So I don't know what you
Yeah,
think about
a
that.
lot of times we have to, yes, go back to core beliefs. And one thing I teach is relational laws. Now, they are like unto the laws of gravity, right? Sir Isaac Newton discovered the laws of gravity. And it doesn't matter if we know the laws of gravity or not, they act upon us anyways, right? So if I throw this pen up in the air, even if I don't know what's going to happen, it's going to happen, right? The pen comes
Hmm.
back down.
Right.
So if I know that the pen's coming back down, I can make a good choice about how to avoid getting hit in the head with the pen, right?
Hmm.
So the laws of gravity are acting whether we understand them or not, but knowing them makes life a lot more predictable.
Hmm.
It's the same with the laws of relationships. Now, the way I like to describe the law of control is that there's only one thing that we control, and that is ourselves, our thoughts, our actions, our beliefs, the things that come out of our mouths, the things we put in our mouths, right? We can control those things. So I describe it like the bullseye. Now, on the outer edge, outside, the next ring is our circle of influence. So the inner ring is our circle of control, which is very small. It's just us. The outside of that ring is our circle of influence. Now, that's things that we can influence, like the outcome of a sporting event we're a part of, or how our money matures in an investment or something. We have influence over our children, our pets, right? Sometimes our spouse, depending. And then outside of that circle of influence is our circle of this. This is what we cannot control, but we think we can. A lot of us spend a lot of time in this outer ring. We think we can control our spouse and our children and our pets and the weather and the economy. And a lot of us think that we can just directly control that. So a lot of victim mentality is because I'm trying to get my spouse to do something that they won't do. And so I
Hmm.
become a victim of my circumstances because I think I can control them, but I cannot.
Hmm.
And so now I have a lot of victim mentality. So it's about educating and showing people how. So the phenomenon that is so amazing, this law of relationships, is the more time we spend in this outer circle, the smaller our actual bullseye becomes. But if we will learn how to focus on that inner ring, the part that we can actually control, our circle of influence grows. And eventually that outer circle becomes completely irrelevant in our lives. We become so powerful because we've stopped trying to control the things that we can't control in our lives. That's where victim mentality comes from. So it takes some education, it takes some rewiring. A lot of times it takes going back to, doing some inner child work. But when somebody starts to understand how this law works, that you can only control from that inner ring, it changes everything. I've watched people go from full on mentality to like the most powerful character in their own lives, writing their own story because now they know where to focus their attention.
Oh, that was incredibly said. And I really appreciated how you said that because that's like relevant in all aspects of life because we're trying to control the big circle, but if we just start here, then
Mhm.
we expand it, influence more, and it just kind of
We
grows from
become so
there.
powerful in our own
Wow.
lives, right?
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. Wow. So yes, no, that's so true. And that's just the old cliched saying, just focus on what you can control right now. It's easier said than done. And I think that's
Right.
where a lot of people are getting frustrated in their relationships, but also throughout, the world and the world issues. I think that's a big problem too, not to get off base, but with all the internet and the social media we've got, people are all the bad news, the doom scrolling, they want to help. They want to do something. I know they come from a good place, but you can't control what's going on there. You think you can, but you
Uh-huh.
can't. So
Yeah,
really,
people think by leaving negative comments on your account or something, they're
yeah.
somehow controlling something that they
Mm-mm.
cannot control.
It does nothing. 90%, 95% of those internet arguments lead to nothing but divisiveness, an unregulated nervous system, and a bunch of lost
Yeah,
faith in
you're right.
humanity, in my opinion. So, before we close things up, a couple things that I wanted to ask for
Yeah.
anyone that's listening. So, as far as your work that you do, are you available worldwide? Are you licensed to counsel anybody? So, anyone that wants to have you as a counselor if they need it, is
Mhm.
able to do that virtually?
Yeah, so I'm a coach,
Okay.
not licensed but certified. So
Certified. Gotcha.
I have the ability to work with anyone nationally or internationally. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. That's awesome. So they would just go to best place to contact you would be what your website. Uh,
MonicaTanner.com.
I have
Yeah.
it down here, monicatanner.com. And then a little bit about the book and the podcast. Then you have a book it's called Bad Marriage Advice, right? That's the book
Yes.
name. When was that put out? When did you put that one
Thank you
out?
so much for asking. It came out in October of last year. So
Okay.
I initially wrote that book for my oldest son, who is getting married at the age of 21. I know everyone's like, oh
Ooh.
my gosh, that's so young, right? So he called and was like, Mom, I met the girl I'm going to marry. I was like, that's amazing. He's like, I want to propose next month. I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh boy.
There's so much I need you to know, right? So I sat down to just write him kind of a, just a beginner's guide letter of like,
Hmm.
I want to make sure that I share all this with you at some point. And it turned into the book. It was just naturally evolved into. And I thought, you know what? My son and I have a great relationship. He'll probably listen to me, but he would definitely listen to me if this was a bestseller. And so
Oh,
that was the
absolutely.
goal. And so, they took it really well. My son and his wife are amazing, and they've read the book and they give it out now as wedding gifts to their friends that are getting married. And so it's a huge honor.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. And you got to do that for your son, even more, passion and value and meaning to that, which is really cool. So we could find that book probably what Amazon, Kindle, Spotify,
Yes.
audio, and all of that good stuff. Anywhere we get
I
our books.
haven't read the book. I haven't made it audio yet.
Okay,
I'm thinking about doing that. A lot of people have asked me. It's a pretty short book. It's an easy read. It's
okay,
easy to digest. It's meant to just, it's kind of a beginner's guide meets cautionary tale. And it's got a lot of personal stories in it. So it's meant to, I hope it makes you smile. And, if you've been married for any length of time, you go, oh yeah, we've
mm,
done that.
yeah,
We've been
right.
there.
That's
And if you're looking for like a beginner's guide, it's like okay, look out for this.
Well, and until that does hit audio, if it does, and if not, that's all right. You've got a podcast out there. It's called
That's right.
Secrets of Happily Ever After. Assuming you can find that on Spotify, Apple,
Yes, you can find
maybe.
that anywhere you get your podcasts. And yes, that has been a labor of love. I've been podcasting for 9 years.
Okay.
And, it's really just about me giving as much of my, I do not have a perfect marriage, far from it, but I use it as my learning lab, right? Like I have a great partner and we learn all kinds of things together. And so the podcast is just a platform for me to talk about what I'm learning, how I'm growing, and the things, that have been helpful to not only my husband and I, but my clients as well.
Right. And I don't think you want a coach that has a perfect marriage or a coach like me that has a perfect diet or anything like that because we use these mistakes to learn from this sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, if you have someone perfect, they're just going to maybe preach from you from a pedestal. So you just got to do what you got to do, share your stories and everything. So that's awesome. So I'm going to get more into the podcast. I did listen to a couple episodes and it is very good and informative. So there you go. If you want to get in touch with Monica, anything else you would like to say before we kind of sign off here? Anything you want to put out there, whatever is on your mind, you can say whatever you want on here. It's anything goes on this thing.
I love it. I think the advice I would give is start where you're at. Don't try to overhaul everything. Pick one thing you heard in this podcast to maybe focus on, and don't get discouraged or feel like you're doing it wrong or anything like that. No matter where you're at, you can improve your skills. It's just relationship is a skill set, just like learning how to play a new sport or a new instrument. You're going to be bad at it before you're going to be good at it. It takes practice and repetition. So just pick one thing, and I promise, even if you're using these skills badly, you are going to be ahead of the curve. So
Love it. Small steps, communication, all that good stuff. That's what we do. So, all right. So, yeah, that's monicatanner.com. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm on social media at MFS Wellness. That's Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. Mike at MFSwellness.com by email if you'd like to do that. So, for Monica, I am Mike, and we will talk to you on the next episode.